The notification lit up my phone at exactly 10:07 a.m. on a Monday morning, right in the middle of the most important pitch of my career. I was standing at the head of a glass conference table on the 23rd floor of our downtown headquarters, walking 7 of the sharpest logistics engineers in the country through a $18 million proposal that would revolutionize freight routing across the Pacific Northwest. The room smelled like fresh coffee and the particular kind of tension that comes right before someone signs a check with a lot of zeros. I should have ignored it. I have a strict rule about phones during strategy meetings. When you're the CEO of a company like Streamline AI, your attention is the most expensive asset in the room. But we were waiting for Maya Rodriguez, our lead engineer, to pull up the final simulation, so I let my eyes flicker down. The message was from Dad. Ariel, about Christmas. We're going to do something just to the two of us in January instead. Julian's family is coming to the dinner, and your mother and I think it would be better if, well, they're very special people. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Hope you understand. I read it twice. The words didn't hurt immediately. It was like cutting your finger on really sharp paper, where you see the line before you feel the sting. Special people. That was the phrase that stuck. Not, we'd love to have you, but we're short on space. Not, we're keeping it small this year. He said Julian's family, my brother-in-law's family, were special people, and my presence would make them uncomfortable. For a moment, I was back at Sophia's wedding 3 years ago. I was sitting at table 14, close enough to the kitchen that I could hear the dishwashers clanking. I was watching my sister float across the dance floor in her $8,000 dress while I ate chicken that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. I was shaking Julian Beaumont's hand and hearing him say, "Nice to meet you. Sophia mentioned you work with computers?" And I'd said, "Something like that," because I was too tired to explain that I'd just closed a $3 million Series A round and was 3 months away from launching the beta of software that would eventually process 4 terabytes of logistics data per second. Maya cleared her throat. The room was waiting. I looked up. 7 faces were turned toward me. Brilliant people who'd followed me from basements and co-working spaces into this glass tower because they believed in what we were building. They saw Ariel Miller, the 33-year-old founder who'd turned a PhD thesis into a company that made supply chains run like clockwork. My father saw a socially awkward daughter who'd embarrass him in front of people who mattered. I picked up my phone. I didn't type a paragraph. I didn't ask why. I typed 4 letters. Okay. I hit send and placed the phone face down on the table. The sound of it hitting the wood echoed in the quiet room. "The Pacific simulation," I said, my voice steady. "Show me the disruption scenarios. If we can't guarantee 96% accuracy under adverse conditions, we're not pitching this to anyone." Maya nodded, relieved that I was back. "We're at 97.2%, Ariel. The new neural net is learning from historical storm patterns faster than we projected." "Good," I said. "Lock it in." We spent the next hour tearing apart variables, stress testing the model until it was bulletproof. That's what I do. I solve problems. I take chaotic, inefficient systems and make them elegant. I make them work. The irony wasn't lost on me that the only system I'd never been able to optimize was my own family. I left the office at 6, driving my 2019 Honda Accord through evening traffic toward the suburbs. I passed my parents' neighborhood, white picket fences, manicured lawns, houses that all looked like they were trying to impress each other. I didn't stop. I hadn't planned to, but seeing the familiar street triggered something, and suddenly I was 13 again. My father, Crispin Miller, grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens with holes in his shoes and a chip on his shoulder. He was the son of German immigrants who'd come to America with nothing and spent their lives being reminded of it. He told me once when I was 16 that the rich kids at his high school used to call his father Fritz the janitor and laugh when Crispin walked by in his second-hand coat. "I swore I'd never be that man," he'd said. "I swore my children would never feel what I felt." So he climbed. He worked his way through community college, then state school, then into middle management at a regional bank. He married my mother, Lynette, whose own parents had scrimped and saved to give her piano lessons and etiquette classes. Together, they built a life that looked successful from the outside. A house in a good zip code, 2 daughters, memberships at the right clubs. But looking successful and being successful are two different things, and my father never quite figured that out. Sophia was born 3 years before me, and from the moment she could smile, she was perfect for them. She was beautiful, the kind of pretty that made people turn their heads in grocery stores. She was charming, intuitive about social dynamics in a way that seemed like magic. By the time she was 12, she could work a room better than most politicians. I was different. I liked facts. I liked systems. When other kids were learning how to flirt, I was reorganizing my bookshelf using the Dewey Decimal System and calculating the statistical probability of rain based on barometric pressure. My mother used to tell her friends I was very serious, which was her polite code for, "We don't know what to do with her." The turning point came when I was 16. I'd spent 6 months building a water purification model for the state science fair, a system that could filter agricultural runoff using solar-powered electrolysis. I won first place. The local paper did a story. My chemistry teacher said I should consider MIT. My father missed the awards ceremony because he had a critical meeting at the bank. 2 weeks later, Sophia placed 10th in a regional teen beauty pageant. Dad threw a party. He invited neighbors, colleagues, the branch manager. He gave a toast about how proud he was. That night, I understood. I could win every science fair in America, and it wouldn't matter as much as Sophia's smile. So I stopped trying to make them see me. I went to state school on a full ride, studied computer science, kept my head down. I came home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, listened to them talk about Sophia's event planning career, nodded politely when they asked if I was still doing the computer thing. 3 years ago, Sophia married Julian Beaumont, and I sat at table 14 near the kitchen. When Julian shook my hand and asked about computers, I didn't correct him. I didn't say I'd just filed 3 patents or that Forbes had called me one to watch. I just said, something like that, and went back to my cold chicken. It was easier to be invisible than to fight to be seen. Until today. The real Ariel Miller existed in a glass building downtown, in a space that smelled like espresso and server farms and the particular kind of electricity that comes from people building something that matters. Streamline A, I occupied 3 floors of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. We'd moved here 6 months ago after outgrowing our previous office for the second time in a year. Now we had 120 employees across Austin, London, and a satellite team in Singapore. We had clients in 14 countries. We had revenue that would make my father's head spin, and nobody here thought I was awkward. At 2 p.m., Derek Chin, my COO, knocked on my office door. Derek was a decade older than me, a former McKinsey consultant who'd taken a massive pay cut to join Streamline AI because, in his words, I was tired of advising companies. I wanted to build one. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Always for you." He sat down across from my desk, tablet in hand. "Beaumont Industries just reached out. They want a meeting." I felt my coffee go cold in my hand. "Beaumont," I repeated carefully. "The Beaumont. $2 billion in annual revenue, logistics and manufacturing across 43 states. They're hemorrhaging money. Our preliminary analysis suggests about $600,000 a day in preventable inefficiencies." That's substantial. They've heard about what we did for Pacific Freight. They want to meet the CEO personally. Derek leaned forward. "Ariel, this is the big one. This contract could be worth $45 million over 3 years. I set down my coffee. "When?" "Thursday, 9 a.m. They're sending a full delegation. CEO, General Counsel, COO, and their Director of Development." "Who's leading their team?" Derek checked his tablet. "Guy named Julian Beaumont. He's the son-in-law of the current CEO, Richard Beaumont. Apparently, Julian's the one who flagged us. He's been pushing for this meeting for weeks." The room tilted slightly. I steadied myself against the desk. Julian didn't know. He'd been researching Streamline AI for weeks, reading our white papers, analyzing our client results, and he had absolutely no idea that the CEO he was so eager to meet was the woman who'd sat at table 14 at his wedding. Derek frowned. "You okay?" "Fine," I said. "Just thinking through logistics." That was a lie. I was thinking through something much more complicated than logistics. I could tell Derek right now. I could tell him that Julian Beaumont was my brother-in-law, that my family had just uninvited me from Christmas to avoid embarrassing themselves in front of his parents. I could tell him this meeting was going to be a personal nightmare wrapped in a professional opportunity. Or I could let Julian walk into my building on Thursday morning and discover the truth himself. "Derek," I said slowly, "I want you to do something for me." "Name it." "Don't send them my bio beforehand. Don't send them my photo. If they ask, just say the CEO prefers to let the work speak first." Derek raised an eyebrow. "You want to go in anonymous? That's unusual." "It's strategic. If they know they're meeting with a 33-year-old woman, they'll come in with assumptions. Let them see the technology first. Let them see the data. Then let them see who built it." It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. "Okay," Derek said slowly. "It's your company. We'll do it your way." After he left, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the city. I pulled up my father's text message again. "They're very special people. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable." I thought about the last 5 years. I thought about building this company from a doctoral thesis and $50,000 in savings. I thought about the nights I'd slept on the office couch because we couldn't afford to miss a deadline. I thought about the day we signed our first $1 million contract, and I'd wanted to call my father, but didn't, because I knew he'd find a way to make it about Sophia. For 5 years, I'd let them believe I was exactly what they thought I was, a struggling tech worker who'd never quite figured it out. On Thursday morning, that belief was going to shatter, and I was going to watch it happen. Tuesday evening, my mother called. "Honey, can you meet me for dinner? Just the two of us. There's a nice Italian place on 7th. I almost said no, but something in her voice, a tightness, a careful control, made me curious. I met her at Marcello's at 7. She was already seated, wearing her pearls and the cream-colored cardigan she saved for occasions when she needed to look maternal. Her water glass had a lipstick print on the rim. "Hi, Mom." "Ariel, sweetheart, you look tired. Are you eating enough?" 20 seconds in, and we were already playing the game. "I'm fine, Mom. You wanted to talk?" She folded her hands on the table, the way she did when she was about to say something difficult. "It's about Christmas," I assumed. "You know your father. He just wants everything to be perfect. The Beaumonts are very refined. They're used to a certain standard. And I don't meet that standard." "That's not what I said." "Then what are you saying?" She looked down at her napkin. "You've never been comfortable at big gatherings, honey. You get quiet. You don't really engage with people. And when Julian's parents are there, with all their expectations..." She trailed off. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you know what I do for a living?" She blinked. "You work with computers, something technical." "Be specific. What do you think I do?" "Well, you do IT support? Or maybe web design?" I sat back in my chair. "I'm the CEO of a technology company. We have 120 employees. We made $45 million in revenue last year." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Streamline AI. I founded it 5 years ago. We build artificial intelligence systems for supply chain logistics. Our clients include some of the largest shipping companies in the world." She set down her fork. "Ariel, why didn't you tell us?" "Because every time I tried, you changed the subject. Every time I mentioned the company, you said, 'That's nice,' and asked Sophia about her latest event." I don't remember that." "I know you don't. That's the problem." She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" "I think you're a scared mother. I think you needed Sophia to be perfect because it made you feel safe. It made you feel like you'd made it." "And what about you?" "I reminded you of all the things you were afraid of. I was weird, awkward, too smart for my own good. I didn't fit the picture." Her eyes were wet. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, but you need to know. I'm not coming to Christmas. Not because I'm angry, because I deserve better than being hidden away like a shameful secret." "Your father just wants..." "I know what Dad wants. He wants to impress Julian's family. He wants to show them that the Millers are successful, polished, worthy, and I don't fit that image. I get it. She reached across the table, but I pulled my hand back. Mom, did you know Julian's company is looking for a logistics vendor? Sophia mentioned he's been stressed about it. I think she mentioned something. I stood up, placed 2 20s on the table for my untouched meal. You should tell Dad to be careful what he wishes for. Sometimes the things you hide end up being exactly what you need. I left her sitting there, pearls and all, trying to figure out what I meant. Wednesday morning, I called an emergency meeting with Derek and Maya in the conference room. There's something you both need to know before Thursday, I said. They exchanged glances. Julian Beaumont is my brother-in-law. He's married to my sister Sophia. He has no idea I'm the CEO of this company. Maya's jaw dropped. What? How is that possible? Because at his wedding 3 years ago, I was seated at a table near the kitchen. When we were introduced, he asked if I worked with computers, and I said yes. That was the extent of our conversation. My family never talks about my work because they think what I do is insignificant. Derek leaned back, processing. Does Sophia know about Streamline AI? She knows I work in tech. She thinks I'm doing IT support for a small startup that might fail any day now. My parents think the same thing. Jesus, Maya muttered. On Monday, my father sent me a text. He uninvited me from Christmas because Julian's family is coming, and he doesn't want me to make things awkward. His exact words were, "They're very special people." Derek's face darkened. Ariel. So, on Thursday, when Julian Beaumont walks into this building expecting to meet some mystery CEO, he's going to discover that the person he's been desperate to hire is the sister-in-law he dismissed 3 years ago. Maya was quiet for a moment, then, "This is going to be incredibly awkward." "Yes." "He's going to feel blindsided." "Yes." "And you're going to let it happen." "Yes." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "Ariel, I get it. I really do. But this is a $45 million contract. If he feels manipulated, if his ego gets bruised, then he'll learn an important lesson about due diligence," I said. "In business and in family." "But, Derek, for 5 years I've been invisible to these people. They decided I didn't matter without ever asking a single question about my life. Julian has been researching this company for weeks. If he couldn't be bothered to Google the CEO's name, that's his failure, not mine." Maya leaned forward. "Ariel, I'm with you. But Derek's right about one thing. The demo needs to be perfect. If we're going to blow his mind, we need to make sure the tech is undeniable." "How's the simulation looking?" "We have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The double catastrophe scenario. When we run simultaneous disruptions like a hurricane and a port strike, the system is glitching. It's crashing about 30% of the time." "We have 36 hours. "I know." "Can you fix it?" Maya looked at her tablet, then back at me. "If I skip sleep, maybe, but it's not guaranteed." "Then skip sleep, because on Thursday morning, when Julian Beaumont asks us why Beaumont Industries should pay us $45 million, I want to show him that simulation. I want to show him that when his world falls apart, we're the only ones who can put it back together." "On it," Maya said, and practically ran out of the room. Derek stayed behind. He looked at me for a long moment. "What?" I asked. "Are you doing this for the company or for yourself?" It was a fair question. I'd been asking myself the same thing since Monday. "Both," I admitted. "Is that wrong?" "No," Derek said. "But it's complicated. And complications have a way of getting messy. So does family." That night, I stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home, but I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo on my wall. It was from the day we'd signed our first major client. Derek, Maya, and I were standing in front of a whiteboard covered in equations, grinning like idiots because we'd just proved that this crazy idea might actually work. My father had never seen that photo. He'd never asked to. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through old texts. There was the message from 3 years ago. "Congrats on finishing your PhD. Now you can get a real job." There was the one from 2 years ago. "Sophia's firm just landed the governor's inauguration gala. We're so proud." There was nothing about Streamline AI because I'd stopped telling them. I'd learned that lesson at 16 when Dad missed my science fair. Some people don't want to see you. They want to see the version of you that makes them comfortable. At 11 p.m., my college roommate called. Sarah and I had stayed close even after graduation. She was one of the few people who knew the whole story. "You're still at the office," she said. It wasn't a question. "How'd you know?" "Because tomorrow is the Beaumont meeting and you're probably spiraling." "I'm not spiraling." "Ariel." I sighed. "Okay, maybe I'm a little bit spiraling." "Talk to me. What's the worst-case scenario?" Julian gets angry. He feels tricked. He walks out, tells everyone in the industry that Streamline AI plays games, and we lose the contract and our reputation. And the best case? He signs the contract, realizes he's been an idiot, and my family finally understands who I actually am. And the most likely scenario? I thought about it. Somewhere in between, awkward, painful, and probably necessary. "Are you doing this to hurt them?" "No," I said immediately. Then more honestly, "I don't think so. I think I'm doing it because I need them to see me, not the version they want me to be, the actual me." "Then do it," Sarah said. "But Ariel, don't lose yourself in the revenge. You're better than that." "This isn't revenge." "Isn't it?" After we hung up, I sat in the dark office, listening to the hum of the servers in the room below. Maya was down there right now, probably on her fourth espresso, racing against the clock to fix a simulation that might make or break our biggest pitch. I thought about my father's text. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. The thing about discomfort is that it's usually a sign that something needs to change. For 33 years, I'd made myself small to keep everyone else comfortable. I'd hidden my successes, downplayed my achievements, pretended to be exactly what they expected. Tomorrow, that ended. I opened my laptop and pulled up the presentation deck for the Beaumont meeting. The title slide was simple: Streamline AI, Predicting Tomorrow's Problems Today. I changed it. Streamline AI, Making the Invisible Visible. Then I went home to sleep, knowing that in less than 12 hours, my two worlds were going to collide. Thursday morning arrived with the precision of a blade. I woke at 5:30 a.m., ran 5 miles on the treadmill in my building's gym, and stood under a scalding shower until my mind was clear. By 6:45, I was dressed in a charcoal gray Tom Ford suit, not flashy but unmistakably expensive, the kind of suit that whispered rather than shouted. I stood in front of my full-length mirror, studying myself. The woman looking back at me was not the Ariel who'd sat at table 14. That woman had worn a dress from Macy's and kept her head down. This woman looked like she could buy and sell the room. My phone buzzed. Derek. "Bug fixed at 4 a.m. Maya's a genius. Demo is perfect. You ready for this?" Me. "I've been ready for 3 years." I thought about my father's text one more time. They're very special people. The thing about being underestimated your whole life is that you learn to move in silence. You learn that the best revenge isn't making people feel small. It's becoming so undeniably large that they can't ignore you anymore. I grabbed my bag and headed out. At 8:45 a.m., I was standing in the Streamline AI lobby with Derek beside me. The space was designed to intimidate: 30-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and our wall of impact displaying every major milestone we'd achieved. Magazine covers featuring our technology, patent certificates, a photo of me speaking at the Global Logistics Summit in Berlin, pointing at a screen full of predictive models. "They just pulled up," Derek said, checking his phone. "Security is bringing them up now." My heart was pounding, but my face was calm. I'd learned a long time ago how to compartmentalize fear. The elevator doors opened. 4 people stepped out. Leading them was Richard Beaumont, 65, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that comes from winter homes in Boca Raton. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my first car, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man who'd never been told no. To his right was Catherine Park, their general counsel, 50, sharp-eyed behind designer glasses, carrying a briefcase that looked like it contained state secrets. To his left was Thomas Wright, their COO, 45, with the exhausted look of someone who'd been fighting fires for months. and behind them, bringing up the rear, was Julian. Julian Beaumont looked exactly as he had at his wedding, tall, square-jawed, with brown hair styled just enough to look effortless. He wore a blue suit and an expression of polite interest, scanning the lobby like he was already calculating real estate values. His eyes swept over the wall of impact. He looked at the Berlin photo, me in front of 2,000 logistics professionals, and his gaze passed right over it. Just another corporate headshot. Then he saw me standing in the center of the lobby. He stopped. Just for a fraction of a second, his step faltered. I saw it happen, the moment his brain tried to place me. His eyes narrowed slightly, processing. But the context was wrong. His sister-in-law was a struggling IT worker. This woman was standing in the lobby of a multi-million-dollar company in a suit that cost 3 months of his mortgage. His brain rejected the connection. Richard approached first, hand extended. "You must be the CEO we've been hearing so much about. Richard Beaumont." I took his hand. Firm grip. Eye contact. "Ariel Miller. Welcome to Streamline AI." I said my full name clearly, distinctly. Richard smiled, unfazed. Why would he recognize the name? His daughter-in-law was Sophia Beaumont now. The maiden name was ancient history, but Julian heard it. I watched his head snap up. He was staring at me now, really looking. I could see the wheels turning. Ariel Miller. That name. Where do I... "This is quite a building," Richard was saying. "Your team did a beautiful job with the space." "Thank you. We moved here 6 months ago. We'd outgrown our previous location." "Growth is always a good problem to have." Richard gestured to his team. "This is Catherine Park, our general counsel. Thomas Wright, our COO. And this is Julian Beaumont, my director of development. He's actually the one who discovered you folks. Been singing your praises for weeks." Julian stepped forward. He had to. There was nowhere else to go. He extended his hand, but his face was pale. The confidence had cracked, replaced by profound confusion. "Julian," I said, taking his hand. I held it just long enough to be professional, but not long enough to be comfortable. "I've heard you've been doing excellent work at Beaumont Industries. I thank you." His voice was uncertain. He was still staring at my face, searching for something. "I'm sorry, have we met before?" Richard laughed. "Julian, her face is on that magazine cover over there. You probably saw it somewhere." But Julian didn't look at the wall. He couldn't take his eyes off me. "No," he said slowly. "It's not that. It's something else." I smiled, polite, professional, detached. "I have one of those faces. Shall we head upstairs? I'm eager to show you what we've built." The elevator ride was 45 seconds of exquisite tension. Julian kept glancing at me. I could feel his confusion radiating off him like heat. He knew me, but his mind was fighting the truth because the truth was impossible. Derek stood beside me, suppressing what I knew was either a smile or sheer panic. When we reached the 23rd floor, I led them into our main conference room. It was pristine. Black walnut table, ergonomic chairs, 3 walls of high-definition displays currently showing our company logo. "Please," I said, gesturing to one side of the table. "Make yourselves comfortable. Can we get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be great," Richard said, settling into the chair at the head of the table. Julian took a seat near the end, as far from me as possible. He looked like a man who'd just realized he was standing on quicksand. I remained standing. "Mr. Beaumont," I began, pulling up the first slide on the main screen. "Your logistics division is losing approximately $600,000 per day. Over the past 18 months, that's $324 million in preventable losses." Richard's eyebrows rose. "That's disturbingly accurate. We don't make guesses. Everything I'm about to tell you is based on publicly available data, industry analysis, and our proprietary prediction models." I clicked to the next slide, a real-time map of Beaumont Industries' supply chain. It was covered in moving dots representing their shipments, and far too many of those dots were red or orange. "This is your current reality," I said. "You're operating on a reactive model. Problems happen and then you respond. Port delays, weather disruptions, labor disputes. You're always playing defense. Thomas leaned forward, studying the screen. How did you get this data? Public shipping manifests, GPS tracking on commercial vessels, and pattern analysis. It's all legal, and it's all telling the same story. Your system is hemorrhaging efficiency. I clicked again. The screen split, showing two scenarios side by side. Here's what happens with your current approach when a Category 4 hurricane hits the Gulf Coast. The left screen animated, red zones spreading like infection, shipping routes failing, warehouses overwhelmed. Estimated loss $45 million over 2 weeks. Nay. Now here's what happens with Streamline AI. The right screen came alive. The same hurricane appeared, but this time, before it even made landfall, shipping routes began rerouting. Warehouse inventories redistributed, alternative supply chains activated. Our system doesn't wait for the problem to hit. It sees the problem forming and moves around it. Estimated loss, $2.8 million. The room was silent. How? Catherine asked. How is that level of prediction possible? Maya, who'd been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. We process 4 terabytes of data per second. Weather patterns, political sentiment analysis, union communications, social media chatter, fuel price fluctuations, historical shipping data going back 30 years. We don't predict the future. We see it taking shape. Richard was nodding slowly. What's your accuracy rate? 97.3% on 18-month forward predictions, I said. We've saved our clients a combined $340 million over the past year. What would this cost us? Catherine asked, her lawyer brain already calculating. For your volume and complexity, $15 million per year, 3-year contract. Total investment, $45 million. Based on our models, you'll break even in 43 days. Everything after that is pure savings. I let that sink in. Now, I said, let me show you what happens when everything goes wrong at once. I nodded to Maya. She pulled up the double catastrophe scenario, the one she'd been debugging until 4 a.m. Category 4 hurricane in the Gulf, simultaneous labor strike at the port of Long Beach, and, I clicked, a fuel price spike triggered by Middle Eastern political instability, all happening in the same 72-hour window. The screen exploded with chaos. Traditional routing models showed total system collapse. This is your nightmare scenario, I said. This is what keeps Thomas up at night. Thomas actually laughed, a bitter, tired sound. Yeah, that's accurate. Watch. The Streamline AI model kicked in. For 37 seconds, we watched in real time as the system recalculated, rerouted, redistributed. Ships changed course. Warehouses reallocated inventory. Air freight was deployed strategically. The chaos resolved into elegant, flowing order. Final loss with our system, $4.1 million. Final loss without it, $67 million. Richard Beaumont sat back in his chair. He looked at me, then at the screen, then back at me. That's remarkable, he said quietly. Julian hadn't said a word. He was staring at the demonstration with something like awe on his face, but his eyes kept drifting back to me. Richard stood up, buttoning his jacket. Ms. Miller, I think we've seen enough. This is exactly what we need. Catherine, Thomas, do you have any concerns? The tech is solid, Thomas said. Better than anything I've seen. Catherine nodded. I'll need to review the contract terms, but conceptually, I'm on board. Excellent. Richard turned to me. This has been one of the most impressive pitches I've seen in 40 years of business. I'd like to move forward immediately. I'm glad to hear that. In fact, Richard continued, I have to say, this whole thing feels like fate. Julian mentioned last week that this company was exactly what we needed, and then to find out you're... He paused, looking at Julian. Wait, Julian, didn't you say something about the CEO being connected to your family? The room froze. Julian's face went white. Connected? Richard asked again. What did you mean by that? Julian opened his mouth, closed it, looked at me with pure terror in his eyes. I could have saved him. I could have changed the subject, deflected, moved on to contract negotiations. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Before we discuss next steps, I said calmly, there's something I need to share. Context that's relevant to our potential partnership. I placed my phone on the table, screen up, and pulled up the text message. I received this on Monday morning, I said. It's from my father. I read it aloud, my voice steady and clear. Ariel, about Christmas. We're going to do something just the two of us in January instead. Julian's family is coming to the dinner, and your mother and I think it would be better if, well, they're very special people. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Hope you understand. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard's face changed. The genial businessman vanished, replaced by something harder. Excuse me? My father uninvited me from Christmas, I said, because your family, you specifically, Mr. Beaumont, are very special people. He was concerned that my presence would make you uncomfortable. Richard turned slowly to look at Julian. Did you know about this? Julian looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. Sophia mentioned keeping the dinner small, but I didn't. I didn't know They didn't know I was worth inviting, I said simply. Richard's jaw tightened. This is completely unacceptable. They used my name, my family's name, to exclude their own daughter? They didn't know what I did for a living, I explained. My family thinks I work in IT support. They think I'm struggling. How is that possible? Thomas asked, genuinely confused. Because I stopped telling them the truth years ago. Every time I tried to share my success, they'd change the subject. So I let them believe what they wanted to believe. It was easier than fighting to be seen. Catherine was shaking her head. Ariel, I'm so sorry. But Richard wasn't done. He turned to Julian and his voice was steel. You're married to her sister? Yes, sir. And you didn't know your own sister-in-law was the CEO of the company you've been researching for weeks? No, sir. I didn't. Why not? Julian's mouth opened and closed. Because at our wedding, she was seated at a back table, and Sophia told me she worked with computers, and I assumed. You assumed she wasn't important enough to learn about, Richard finished. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Richard took a deep breath, clearly trying to control his temper. I need a moment with my team. Catherine, Thomas, hallway. Now. They filed out, leaving Julian, Derek, and me in the conference room. Derek started to follow, but I shook my head slightly. He stayed. Julian sat frozen in his chair, staring at the table. Finally, he looked up at me. Ariel, I'm so sorry. At the wedding, I should have asked more questions. You should have treated me like a person instead of an accessory, I said. My voice wasn't angry. It was just tired. You saw a woman in a cheap dress at a back table and you decided I wasn't worth your time. That's not... He stopped. Okay. Yes. That's exactly what I did. Thank you for being honest. But I need to tell you something else. Julian stood up, pacing to the window. I need to tell you this before we sign any contract because if I don't, I'll never be able to look at myself in the mirror. I waited. 5 years ago, he began, his back to me. I was at a logistics conference in Seattle. I didn't go to most of the panels. I was too arrogant to think anyone could teach me anything. But I grabbed a bunch of white papers from the exhibition hall. My stomach dropped. I knew where this was going. One of them was titled Dynamic Inventory Allocation via Predictive Modeling. It was anonymous, just a company name I didn't recognize, Flowstream Labs. That was our original name, I said quietly. Julian turned around. His face was pale. I read it on the flight home. It solved a warehousing problem I'd been stuck on for 6 months. So I wrote a memo to the board. I presented the core concept as my own analysis. My own strategic thinking. Derek inhaled sharply. That strategy saved Beaumont Industries $7 million, Julian continued. I got promoted to Director of Development because of it. I built my career on your work, and I never gave you credit. I never even tried to find out who wrote it. I sat down, processing this. You plagiarized my research. Yes. And you're telling me this now because I can't sign a contract with you while lying about who I am, and because I'm realizing I've been lying a lot. To you, to Sophia, to myself. I looked at him for a long moment. This man had dismissed me at his wedding, stolen my work, and married into a family that treated me like a burden. I could destroy him right now. I could tell Richard, torpedo the contract, make sure his career ended in disgrace. But something in his face stopped me. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't trying to minimize what he'd done. He was just standing in his shame. "Do you want to know what the worst part is?" I asked. "Tell me." "The worst part is that I expected all of this. I expected you to not see me. I expected Sophia to minimize me. I expected my father to be ashamed. And when you all did exactly what I expected, it still hurt." My voice cracked on the last word. Just slightly, but enough. Julian's eyes were wet. "I don't know how to make this right." I stood up and walked to where he was standing. We were 3 feet apart, two people who'd been family for 3 years without ever really seeing each other. "You can't make it right," I said, "but you can do better going forward. Here's how this works. We're going to sign this contract. You're going to publicly credit my team for the work you used, and you're going to go home tonight and tell Sophia the truth about who I am, all of it. She's going to be devastated." "Good. Maybe then she'll finally see me." Julian nodded slowly. "Okay, I can do that." "And Julian, if you ever use someone else's work again without attribution, I'll make sure everyone in this industry knows about it. Are we clear?" "Crystal." Richard and his team returned 20 minutes later. Whatever conversation they'd had in the hallway had left Richard looking grim but determined. "Ms. Miller," he said, sitting back down. "First, I want to apologize on behalf of my family. The way you've been treated is unconscionable." "Mr. Beaumont, you don't need to—" "I do. Because if we're going to work together, and I very much want to work together, I need you to know that you have my respect. Complete respect." He looked at Julian. "All of you need to understand something. I built Beaumont Industries from nothing. My father was a factory worker. I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people dismiss you because you don't fit their picture of success. And I will not tolerate that behavior in my organization or my family." He turned back to me. "We want this contract, not because you're connected to Julian, because you're the best. Do we have a deal?" I looked at Derek. He gave me a tiny nod. "Yes," I said. "We have a deal." Catherine pulled out the contract documents. For the next hour, we went through terms, liability clauses, implementation timelines. It was boring, technical work, exactly the kind of work that had always made my father's eyes glaze over. At 11:47 a.m., I signed my name on the final page. $45 million. 3 years. The biggest contract in Streamline AI's history. Richard shook my hand. "Welcome to the Beaumont family, the real family." As they gathered their things to leave, Julian approached me one more time. "I'm calling Sophia as soon as I get to the car," he said. "I'd expect nothing less." "Ariel, thank you for not destroying me back there." "I didn't do it for you. I did it because revenge isn't my business model. Excellence is." After they left, the conference room fell silent. Derek and Maya stood there staring at me. "Did that really just happen?" Maya asked. "Yeah," I said. "I think it did." My phone was already buzzing. 3 missed calls from my mother. 5 texts from Sophia, each one more frantic than the last. I turned my phone face down on the table. "I need a minute," I said. They left, closing the door behind them. I sat alone in the conference room, looking out at the city below. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline finally releasing. I'd done it. I'd walked into that meeting, laid everything bare, and came out the other side with the contract and my dignity intact. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real reckoning was still to come. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 hours. I let it vibrate on my desk while I worked through implementation timelines with Derek, while I briefed the engineering team on the Beaumont contract, while I pretended that my entire family wasn't simultaneously combusting on the other end of those ignored calls. At 3:14 p.m., Sophia left a voicemail. I played it on speaker. "Ariel, call me back right now. Julian just told me. He said you're the CEO. He said you make $45 million a year. He said I've been—" He said, her voice broke into tears. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me look like an idiot? Call me back, 3:27 p.m. My mother. Honey, your father and I need to understand what's happening. Julian called us. He was very upset. Please come home so we can talk about this. 3:45 p.m. My father. Ariel, this has gone too far. We need to discuss this like adults. I'll expect you at the house at 6 o'clock. I texted back one message to all of them. I'm busy. We'll talk when I'm ready. Derek appeared in my doorway at 4. You okay? Define okay. Fair point. He sat down. For what it's worth, you handled that meeting like an absolute professional. Richard Beaumont is already telling people you're the most impressive CEO he's worked with. That's nice. Ariel. I looked up at him. I'm fine, Derek. Really. I just need some time to process. You know you're going to have to face them eventually. I know, but it's going to be on my terms, not theirs. I drove to my parents' house at 7, an hour later than my father had demanded. The Honda felt like armor. I could have taken my Tesla, could have rolled up in visible success, but that would have been playing their game. The house looked exactly as it always did. Perfect lawn, perfect shutters, perfect facade. I didn't knock. I still had my key. They were all waiting in the living room. My father stood by the fireplace like he was preparing to give a lecture. My mother sat on the couch, twisting a tissue in her hands, and Sophia was curled in the armchair, mascara-stained and miserable. You made us look like fools, Crispin said before I'd even closed the door. No, Dad, you made yourselves look like fools. I just existed. You should have told us, Sophia exploded from her chair. You should have told me you were successful. You should have— Why? I interrupted. So you could take credit? So you could use me to make yourself look better? I'm your sister. You uninvited me to Christmas, Sophia. She faltered. That was Dad's idea. I turned slowly to look at her. Was it? The silence stretched out. Sophia, I said quietly. Tell them the truth. Her face crumpled. Okay, fine. It was my idea. I asked Dad to keep the guest list small, because Julian's parents are so perfect and I wanted everything to be perfect, and you— She was crying now. You always make things weird. How? You don't talk. You don't laugh at their jokes. You just sit there looking uncomfortable and it makes me uncomfortable. Or maybe I'm uncomfortable because you treat me like a shameful secret. Lynette stood up, tears streaming down her face. Ariel, Michin Loy. I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know we were hurting you like this. You never asked, Mom. For 5 years, you never once asked about my work. Not once. I thought you didn't want to talk about it. I tried. Every time I mentioned the company, you said, "That's nice," and changed the subject to Sophia's events. Crispin was staring at the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Do you know what it's like to grow up poor? To be the kid everyone laughs at because your father is a janitor? No, I said. I don't. I spent my whole life climbing out of that hole. I wanted my daughters to never feel what I felt. And Sophia— He looked at her. She was good at it. She knew how to fit in with those people, and you— I reminded you of who you used to be, I finished. He nodded, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time in my life. Yes. I sat down on the ottoman, suddenly exhausted. Dad, I understand your fear. I really do. But you dealt with it by making me invisible, and that's not something I can just forgive because you're sorry now. What do you want from us? Crispin asked. I want you to actually see me, not the version you wish I was. The actual me. Sophia wiped her eyes. I do see you now. Julian told me everything. About the company, about the contract, about how you let him confess about stealing your work instead of destroying him. He told you about that. Everything. He's been a mess all day. He thinks he's going to lose his job. He's not. Richard respects honesty, even when it's painful. Sophia looked at me with something like wonder. You're really good at this, aren't you? The business thing. Yes. I never knew. Because you never wanted to know. The next morning, an email arrived from Richard Beaumont. Ariel, my wife Eleanor, and I would be honored if you would join us for Christmas Eve dinner at our home. This is not a business dinner. This is a family dinner. You are family in the ways that truly matter. Julian has told us everything. We understand there is pain and history here, and we don't presume to fix it. But we want you to know that you have a place at our table, always. Your parents and sister are not invited. This invitation is for you alone. Warmly, Richard. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Sophia with one line. This is what it feels like to be excluded. How does it feel? Her response came immediately. Like shit. Is that what you wanted to hear? Me. No. I wanted you to understand. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. I almost didn't go to the Beaumont estate. I sat in my car in their circular driveway for 5 full minutes, debating whether I was ready for this. Then I saw Sophia's car. She wasn't supposed to be here. I walked to the front door and Richard answered. He saw my face and gave me an apologetic smile. Julian asked if she could come. I told him I'd leave it up to you, but I thought you might say no if I asked first. You thought correctly. Will you stay anyway? I think you two need to talk. I almost left. My hand was on my car keys, but something made me stop. Fine, but if this turns into an ambush, I'm billing you my hourly rate. Richard laughed and let me in. The Beaumont house was elegant but warm, nothing like the cold perfection of my parents' place. There were family photos everywhere, books scattered on tables, a Christmas tree that looked homemade rather than designer. Sophia was sitting in the living room with Eleanor Beaumont, looking small and nervous. Julian stood by the fireplace looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Dinner was awkward for the first 30 minutes. We made small talk about the weather, about the implementation schedule, about anything except the elephant in the room. Then Eleanor, bless her, cut through it. Ariel, she said, setting down her wine glass. Julian told us about your presentation. He said you predicted their problems before they even knew they had them. That's extraordinary. It's what the system does. No, Eleanor said firmly. It's what you do. You see patterns. You see what others miss. Sophia spoke up suddenly. That's what she's always done. Everyone turned to look at her. When we were kids, Sophia continued, her voice shaking, Ariel would notice everything. Like when Mom was sad even though she was smiling, or when Dad was stressed even though he said he was fine. She saw through all of it. And you told me to stop being so serious, I said, because it scared me. Sophia's eyes were filling with tears. You were always so much smarter than me. I knew I couldn't compete with that. So I made myself the pretty one, the charming one, and I made you the weird one, the awkward one. Because if you were failing, then I was succeeding. She was fully crying now, not the pretty crying from movies, but real, ugly sobbing. I needed you to be small so I could feel big, and I'm so sorry, Ariel. I felt my own eyes burning. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. I know. You hurt me for years. You made me feel worthless. I know. But I took a shaky breath. I'm willing to try. If you're willing to actually see me, really see me. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. We didn't hug. We didn't have a tearful reunion. We just sat there in the painful space between who we'd been and who we might become. Julian cleared his throat. Ariel, I need to say something too. Julian, you don't have to. I do. I went to the board yesterday. I told them the truth about the warehouse strategy, about your research. I gave you full credit publicly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because you were right. I need to do better. We all do. Richard raised his glass. To doing better. And to Ariel, who's teaching us all what integrity actually looks like. We toasted. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fixed. But it was honest. Christmas morning, I went to the office. Streamline A, I was closed, but I had my key. I needed the quiet, needed to think. I was at my desk when I heard the elevator. My father stepped out, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "How did you know I'd be here?" I asked. "Because you've always come here when you needed to think, even before I knew what here was." He sat down across from me, uninvited. "Richard Beaumont called me yesterday." "Did he?" "He told me I was a fool. He told me I'd raised a genius and treated her like a burden." Crispin's voice was rough. "He wasn't wrong." I said nothing. "When I was 12, my father continued, my father lost his job. We had to move to a smaller apartment in a worse neighborhood. My friends from school stopped talking to me because I was poor. And I swore on everything I had that I would never be powerless again." "So you spent your life chasing power?" "Wrong kind of power. I thought power meant money and status and the right connections. I taught Sophia to chase it too, but you—" He looked at me. "You never cared about any of that." "I cared about being loved for who I am." "I did love you." "No, Dad. You loved the idea of me, the version you wanted me to be. But she didn't exist." Crispin's face crumpled. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it. You can only do better." "What does that mean?" "It means if you want to be my father, really be my father, you have to learn who I actually am, not who you want me to be, who I really am." "Will you teach me?" I looked at him for a long time. This man who'd hurt me, who'd made me invisible, who'd chosen his fear over my worth. "I don't know yet. I need time." "I understand." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not because you're successful, because you're stronger than I ever was. You didn't let us break you." "I came close, but you didn't. And that takes a kind of strength I never had." After he left, I sat in the silence of my empty office, watching the sun rise over the city. 6 months later, the Streamline. AI Summer Gala was everything the Christmas I'd missed wasn't. Warm, genuine, full of people who actually knew me. 200 employees, clients, and partners filled the rooftop venue. The Beaumont delegation was there. Richard and Eleanor had become genuine friends. Julian and Sophia stood near the bar, and something about them looked different. Less polished, more real. My mother was there too. Crispin wasn't. He'd sent a card saying he was working on himself with a therapist. It was the first truly honest thing he'd said to me in years. I stood at the microphone looking out at the crowd. 6 months ago, I began, I signed the biggest contract in our company's history, but that's not what I'm celebrating tonight. Tonight, I'm celebrating visibility. For a long time, I believed being invisible was safer. If people couldn't see me, they couldn't judge me. But I was wrong. Being invisible doesn't protect you. It erases you. So tonight, I'm celebrating everyone in this room who refused to be erased, who built something real, something undeniable. Thank you for seeing me, and thank you for letting me see you." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Sophia found me on the terrace. "Can we talk?" We stepped away from the crowd. "I started therapy," she said, "after everything." "How is it?" "Hard. I'm learning that I built my whole identity on being better than you. And now that you're—" She gestured at the party. "I don't know who I am anymore." "You're my sister." "Am I? After everything?" "You're my sister who hurt me," I said. "But you're also my sister who's trying to change. And that's enough. For now." We stood side by side, looking out at the city lights. "Dad wants to see you," Sophia said. "I'm not ready yet." "Okay." She squeezed my hand. "I'll wait, however long it takes." Inside, Richard was giving a toast. "To Ariel Miller, the woman who taught us that elite isn't about who you know. It's about what you build." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt seen, and for the first time in 33 years, that was enough. Maya appeared at my elbow with champagne. "Boss, you good?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I really am." "Good, because we just got an inquiry from Jensen Global. They want to talk about an $80 million contract." I laughed. "When?" "Monday." "Then I guess we'd better get back to work." As the party continued around me, I realized something. I'd spent my whole life waiting for my family to see me, to validate me, to tell me I was enough. But I didn't need them to anymore. I'd finally seen myself, and that was the only permission I'd ever really needed. I looked around the rooftop, at the team I'd built, the company I'd created, the life I'd made from nothing but my own mind and will. My father had been wrong about so many things, but he'd been right about one. I was strong. Strong enough to be invisible when I needed to be, and strong enough to step into the light when it mattered. I raised my glass to the city, to the future, to everything I'd built and everything still to come. To visibility, I whispered, and somewhere in the distance, I swear the city whispered back,